Welcome back to my garden. When you hear the phrase, raise the bar, perhaps you immediately think about some sort of government body fighting to improve standards in education or health. Maybe it conjures up an image of a particularly overzealous boss that you might have had once upon a time. But when I hear raise the bar, it brings back something, memories flooding back. And I hear it as an instruction rather than a phrase, and I hear it spoken with an unmistakable voice. It takes me right back to Sao Paulo. Not my school, by the way. Back to O'Malley's, an Irish pub. I say Irish pub, I mean there was nothing Irish about it at all. The owner, Ali, he was British of a sort. His parents were Turkish and Dutch. He'd grown up in Southampton and eventually found himself in Brazil, working as an underwriter for Lloyd's, and got married, opened a pub, and, well, the rest was history. O'Malley's was a really, really popular expat establishment, even though it wasn't Irish other than its name. But it was, certainly when I arrived in Sao Paulo in the early 2000s, it was the go-to place to watch Premier League football. And that's where the phrase really kind of got burned into my mind indelibly. I can hear it whenever I see it. I can hear it rattling around, this instruction uttered by Big Tony. Raise the bar, Reevesy, raise the bar. Big Tony was the leader of a cohort of ne'er-do-wells who worked in some sort of dodgy financial enterprise, selling financial products to unsuspecting expats. And along with Big Tony, who was, I suppose, the leader, and I think it was probably run along some sort of MLM, mixed level marketing, or perhaps, for want of a better word, pyramid scheme type of incentives. Big Tony did very, very well. The people working for him, I'm not so sure. They survived, but I think that was about it. And at any rate, they loved their football, and we'd often meet on a Saturday, on Sunday morning to watch the games. And there was a bit of a ritual attached to it. You know, you'd watch the game, you get there a little bit early, have your first pint, order another one when the first half kicked off, half time, well, another pint, and I would go for their gourmet burgers, which were absolutely astounding. Second half, a pint or two more, one after the game, and then everyone would sort of adjourn to an upstairs room, the pool room. And at that point, I mean, if you've been keeping count, I'd had more than my fair share of, very often Carlsberg, I think, was my particular cheap and cheerful pint of choice. Occasionally it was Guinness, but mostly Carlsberg. And 5 or 6 pints down the line, I was never much of a pool player, but certainly I was barely capable of holding a cue, never mind pointing it in the right direction. So I'd just watch and listen to the banter, which was always very entertaining. And the lads would have little wagers. And a game between Tony and Reevesy would almost always end the same way. I mean, I think Tony was probably a slightly better pool player, but that wasn't the point. He had a a cunning way of increasing the psychological pressure. As you are moving up towards a key moment in the game, he would utter those famous words: "Raise the bar, Reevesy, raise the bar." Reevesy might be slightly ahead on the table, and the stake might have been something like $10, $20. But raise the bar was an implicit call to raise the stakes. And this could carry on a few times in a game. And I'd seen games there where it was $200, $300, $400, which was small change for Tony, but probably amounted to a week's work at the time for Reevesy. So it upped the pressure, and consequently Reevesy would waver, and Big Tony would capture the spoils. As I say, it was slightly incongruous. It was a lovely phrase. Raise the stakes doesn't sound quite the same. Raise the bar brings with it a sort of formality. As I say, it's something that you'd hear in the world of a government office or an institution, not around a pool table. And raise the stakes would have been much more appropriate. Now, what's all that got to do with you and me, life, the universe, and everything? It does make me chuckle when I hear raise the bar. And it does take me back a good 20 years to those, I don't want to say halcyon days at O'Malley's, but they were a lot of fun. Those wild days when I just arrived in Brazil, hadn't quite found my direction, which ended up being art, and certainly at the time, drinking a lot, watching football and having a laugh with the lads seemed to be a good way to spend the time, or at least mark time until I'd worked out a clearer path forward. And the thing is, when we think about raise the bar as an expression, it is talking about, if you go back to the original derivation, it's talk about making something more challenging, more difficult, I suppose, in a sense. Reevesy certainly did find the games more challenging and difficult if more was at stake. But that's not really what the phrase means. It came out of, I suppose, the world of track and field. Certainly, that would have been my first guess. And my friends at Google search suggest that this is indeed the case. And the phrase has been knocking around since the early part of the 20th century, since, I suppose, the beginning of the Olympic movement. It comes from high jump or pole vault, where raising the bar literally does make a jump more challenging. These days, sometimes when people talk about raising the bar, raising standards, certainly in institutions, I think I'm not sure that it actually they're talking about making something more challenging. What they're talking about sometimes is just making something more of the same. If they mentioned raise the bar at the dubious offices of that financial enterprise that Big Tony, Reevesy, and the like worked, raising the bar would have meant setting more challenging targets, and in that sense it seems to be appropriate. But the way you'd accomplish those targets wouldn't be by doing something more difficult. It would just be by doing more of what you're already doing. Cold calling prospective clients, prospects, converting more of them simply by volume, and thereby making more money. If that was how you jumped higher in high jump. It would, in a sense, be by simply making more jumps. But the fact that I can clear 80 centimeters 3 times in a row, jumping 2 meters 40, doesn't make me an Olympic high jumper. A bit of a silly analogy, but you get what I mean. No, raising the bar, raising standards, to me, should really imply challenging someone to do more than what they already feel they are capable of. Doing something more difficult. It has everything, dare I say it, to do with the mastery path. When we raise the bar on the mastery path, we up the level of difficulty. We try and do something that takes what we were doing before and then goes beyond. And in that sense, it is very much like a high jumper, adding 5 centimeters to their previous jump. 5 centimeters in and of itself isn't a lot, but 5 centimeters on top of what they've already been doing, well, it's a big challenge. So I think, in that sense, I'm not sure why I started thinking about raise the bar. It could have been provoked watching a football game. Could have been that Champions League has just resumed, and I remember actually in terms of watching football, one of that group, Dazza, very passionate Liverpool fan, he certainly raised his bar. He cashed in all his savings, which was 2005, flew to Turkey, Istanbul, no ticket, but he just flew anyway. I don't think he begged, borrowed or stole. I think he had a bit of cash left over, found a scalper, bought a ticket, and watched Liverpool raise the bar in terms of Champions League final comebacks. 3-0 done and dusted at half-time against AC Milan, and then, thanks to a series of improbable events, managed to come back in the second half, reach 3-3 and win on penalties with Jerzy Dudek's famous spaghetti legs routine. So perhaps something during the week jogged that memory, and then a sort of rabbit hole of connected thoughts led me on to Dazza, and then from Dazza, well, it's a short leap to Big Tony and raise the bar, Reevesy, raise the bar. I mean, burnt into my mind. I wonder what happened to them. I hope Reevesy did raise the bar. I mean, he looked like he was heading towards nowhere fast when I knew him more or less 20 years ago. Perhaps, who knows? Perhaps he did manage to raise the bar. I wouldn't bet on it. Not even a little bit, never mind a raise the bar Reevesy-esque $200-300. No, if I was to put some money on him improving, it would be just enough that it would comfort me if he failed, and not enough that if, as in all likelihood, he ended up just trundling along, that it wouldn't bother me too much. So, there we are. Go out and raise the bar, wherever you are. And if not, at least I hope you carry on a life filled with joy. And until next week, from a overcast and rainy Brazil,